Hey everybody, welcome to today's session of Family Story Times on Race and Diversity. It's June 2021 and that means we are hitting our 1-year anniversary for this program. So, yay to you for hanging with me and yay to me for hanging with you. And welcome to anybody that's joining our conversations right now. If you are, then I should introduce myself. My name is Sira Williams. I'm the children's librarian here at the Red Bank Public Library, and we're going to have a good discussion today. You can tell that we're doing something special, but I need to start by taking care of a little business. I want to let you know that next month I'm not going to host this program online. I'm going to take a break. But I don't want us to stop thinking about issues of race and diversity. And so I came up with an idea. We're going to have a family summer read along. And that means that you can pick up a kit from the library that will look like this. Look at these cute little piece bags I found. You know I love peace and love. So you're going to get this bag. You get to keep all of this. There's going to be some inspirational goodies inside, like bookmarks and stickers. But most importantly, you're going to get this book, your own copy that you can keep in your collection. It's called Can I Touch Your Hair? Poems of Race, Mistakes, and Friendship by Irene Latham and Charles Waters. And it's set up as a conversation between these two characters, a white girl and a black boy who go to school together. And on each page, you'll see their perspectives on different subjects. And it's just a perfect way to get you talking about those same topics at home. And you can read it in snippets, like 1 page a day, and talk about it. Or you can read it all at once because it's just a short little picture book. But I think it'll be a good exercise. I'll give you some discussion questions, but you'll be at home with your own family, doing your own thing. And you can handle it however you like. And we'll get back together in August and see what you thought about it, okay? Leave a comment on this post and let me know if you're interested in a kit so I can set one aside for you, or contact me at the library, okay? I think that's gonna be really good. Hey, I'm excited about today too, because I'm trying to have a little party in here and celebrate. Do you see my decorations? I know you see the red, white, and blue. I know you see stars. I know you see a different flag that maybe you've never seen before. And you're wondering, what are you celebrating? It's not the 4th of July. Nope, it's not the 4th of July. It's Juneteenth. We're gonna talk about Juneteenth today. And Juneteenth is a holiday that has been celebrated in the Black community for generations, in families and churches and organizations. And it's only now beginning to make its way through other communities. This is the very first year in New Jersey that it's an official state holiday. And that's exciting because the more people that become aware of it, then our celebrations can become more diverse and inclusive. And that's just always a good thing, because when it comes down to it, Juneteenth is really about freedom. And what's more American than that, really? So I want us to think about freedom. And I think it would be a good exercise for you and your family to talk about freedom and what it means to you. You could write it down and interview your family members, make a video, you could do a whole exercise around it, because really Memorial Day, Juneteenth, and 4th of July, this whole summer season of holidays are all centered on freedom. And so Juneteenth is an all-American holiday, and it should be celebrated by all Americans. So let's talk about it. The thing is that it's impossible to talk about Juneteenth without talking about slavery and the role of slavery in American history. And that's a really difficult subject. And it's very possible that you've never talked about slavery together as a family. It's also very possible, depending on how old you are, that you've never learned about it in school yet. But it's such an important subject. It should not be avoided. It should not be minimized when we talk about American history. So I really want you to try to find a way to talk about it and learn about it in an age-appropriate way for your family. And I'm going to leave that to you. But I do have to talk about it in this conversation. So if you feel that your family's not ready for that discussion right now, then maybe this is just a program for the parents and guardians today. Again, I'm going to let you decide that. And I'm going to go ahead and give you a basic explanation of slavery. And it starts over 400 years ago. 400 years ago in 1619, when the first Africans were brought to this continent of North America on ships. And when they arrived here, they were sold and bought and owned by white people. And they were called slaves, and they were forced to work all day, every day, doing very hard work. They worked in the fields on huge, huge farms called plantations. They cooked and cleaned and worked and did any kind of chore that you could possibly imagine. And remember, this is 400 years ago, and it was a time when there was no electricity, there were no cars, there were no machines. Everything had to be done by hand, and it was very, very hard work. And the black slaves were not paid for the work that they did, and they were not allowed to leave. So this system was very unfair, and the slaves were not free. They were not free. And so the other thing I want you to know, though, is that during this time, there were a lot of good people, white people and black people, who knew that slavery was not right and who tried to end it. And a whole war was fought in this country, the Civil War, where Americans fought Americans. The North fought the South to try to end the institution of slavery. And it was a very difficult time in American history. And I'm telling you all of this because we need to know it for our story of Juneteenth. The last thing I want to tell you that you need to know is that slaves were not allowed to learn how to read and write. They were not. And that's because their white owners needed them to stay in a position where they relied on them to get their news and information. You know that when you learned how to read, that like the world opened up to you. You can read and learn and discover so many things all by yourself. And you don't have to rely on anyone else. And it's very hard for people to keep information from you when you can read. So keep that in mind as we take a look at our book. This book is called Juneteenth. It's by Vaunda Micheaux Nelson and Drew Nelson, and it's illustrated by Mark Schroeder. And I'm going to just read parts of it. I'm going to skip over the parts about the beginnings of slavery and the life of slaves and the beginnings of the Civil War, because we talked about that just a little bit. And I just want us to get to how Juneteenth came to be. So it says, Jubilee. It is June 19th, 1865, a hot day in Texas. So I want you to remember 1865 and Texas. Clouds decorate the bright blue sky, and on a farm outside the city of Galveston, a man hoes corn. You see how huge you can just see corn as far as the eye can see. 5 miles away, a teenage boy chops wood, and nearby, a woman scrubs the floor. Her sister milks a cow in the barn, and it seems like a normal day. Then a message arrives in Galveston. It races from ear to ear through town. The message is carried to the countryside by riders on horseback and by wagon and by people on foot. And the people on foot are running because the message is so important. When the news reaches the man in the cornfield, tears roll down his cheeks. 5 miles away, the young woodcutter plants his axe in a stump and runs to hug his father. Nearby, the woman stops scrubbing and starts dancing across the wet floor. Her sister drops the bucket of milk and falls to her knees. And as the news spreads across Texas, people stop working and jump for joy. These men and women and children were not ordinary workers. They were black slaves. The news that arrived on June 19th changed their lives forever. On that day, General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston. He read an order from Abraham Lincoln. The order said that the slaves were free. This was good news, but it was old news. President Lincoln had given the order in 1863. But slaves in some places were not told right away. It took more than 2 years for the order to reach Texas slaves. And when it finally did, the streets of Galveston rang with black voices shouting, "We're free, free, free!" I'm going to skip this part about slavery and about the start of the Civil War. That's the fight between the North and the South. And here is President Lincoln. It says on January 1st, 1863, President Lincoln signed a special order called the Emancipation Proclamation. It said that slaves in the Confederate States, those are the Southern states, that they were forever free. But many plantation owners didn't tell their slaves about President Lincoln's order. They wanted the slaves to keep working. Even when the owners knew that the South would lose the war, they wanted one more free harvest. But Northern soldiers brought the news to slaves as the troops moved through the South, and they spread the word to others, and soon thousands of freed slaves joined the Union Army, the Northern Army, to help win the war. It says some Texas slaves heard tales about freedom, but they couldn't be sure those stories were true. Slaves had to be careful. If they even talked about freedom, their owners might punish them. All they could do was wait and hope. Finally, in April 1865, the North won the Civil War, and Texas was the last state where the official announcement was made. It says not everybody believed the announcement. More than 200 years had passed since Africans were first captured and brought to North America. By 1865, most slaves in North America had been born here. The only life they ever knew was slavery. And then, in an instant, they were free. But once they knew the truth, they stopped working. And that moment was scary and wonderful. They were free. They laughed and cried and shouted and prayed and danced and sang and gathered and hugged, and they imagined their lives as free Americans. This page tells how some of those freed slaves went on to try to find family that they had been separated from, but many, many stayed right where they were on those plantations to work because they had no money. They had nowhere to go, and so they stayed. And the slaves were free, but Black Americans would struggle for equal rights for a long time. Still, the end of slavery brought great joy and a reason to celebrate. And that's how we get to Juneteenth. June 19th, 1866, 1 year after they learned of their freedom, the former slaves came together to celebrate. Galveston was alive with music and the smell of barbecue. People wore their Sunday best and gathered and hugged and told stories and sang songs. That was the first of many June 19th celebrations in Texas. And as Black Texans moved to other states, they brought that celebration and tradition with them. And eventually, as the years passed and stories were told and retold, the words June and 19th blended together to just become Juneteenth. Get it? Today, Juneteenth is celebrated much like the first anniversary in 1866. People of all colors get together for picnics at parks and churches and schools. Barbecue is eaten along with potato salad and corn on the cob and ice cream and cakes and pies. It says red velvet cake and red soda pop are traditional treats because red honors all the people whose blood was shed in slavery and in the struggle for freedom. People celebrate with parades, with races and games and dances and parties and worship services and readings of the Emancipation Proclamation. Those are important parts of a Juneteenth celebration. Speakers tell stories of slavery and freedom and why Texas slaves were the last ones to get the news. No one forgets that Juneteenth is not just a day to have fun, it's a day to remember. Juneteenth is celebrated in big and small ways almost everywhere in the United States. The government of Texas made it a state holiday in January 1st, 1980. That's a long time ago. And now from Florida to Alaska and California to New Jersey, other states across the nation have followed this example. Some people believe June 19th should be a national holiday, like Thanksgiving or the 4th of July. Wherever it's celebrated, Juneteenth is a time to sing praises for the end of slavery in the United States. Absolutely. So now that you know the origin story of Juneteenth, you understand why we celebrate? Do you think it should be a national holiday? I think so. What do you think about the fact that it took 2 years for the slaves in Texas to hear the news that they had been freed? 2 years is a really long time, don't you think? Do some math and think, how old were you 2 years ago? Now think of all the things that you've learned, the places you've gone, the things that you've done, how much you've grown. Like 2 years is a lot. It's a long time. And that seems so unfair. But it happened and we remember it and we honor those people and their struggle and we celebrate their freedom because their freedom is our freedom. Now I want to tell you about my decorations here. I want to tell you about this flag. It's the official flag of Juneteenth. And can you see some of the similarities that it has with the flag of the United States of America? First of all, it's red, white, and blue. And that's because it's an American holiday. We talked about that already. The slaves who worked so hard their whole lives to help build this country, who were born and died as slaves, and those who were freed, they were Americans. And so we need to remember that. The star in the middle is like the stars that we have on our flag, but a single star, a lone star, represents Texas. That's where our story took place, and Texas is the Lone Star State. And the burst around it just represents like the excitement of freedom and new possibilities. And the last thing to point out is this arch. You see that it's not a straight line. It looks like a sunrise, like the horizon. And that represents the future and all the possibilities that it holds. So that's our flag. And often you will see the date, June 19th, 1865, on the side of that flag. So now that you've seen it, keep your eyes peeled and see if you notice it out and about. I saw it hanging outside someone's house yesterday. I also want to point out that you'll see lots of Juneteenth decorations and flyers and posters in this color scheme of red, yellow, green, and black. These are colors that always have significance in the Black community. We talked about some of these colors when we talked about Kwanzaa, but don't be surprised if you see decorations in that color scheme as well, and that's all good. All right, I want to end this program on a good note, on an up note, so I'm gonna read us a poem to inspire us, and then I'm gonna say a little toast. And, oh, I forgot to show you something. Oh my gosh, I forgot to show you my flag. I made this, and I think this would be a fun idea to do with your definitions of freedom, but I always leave you with some peace and love at the end of my programs. And so this time I added peace, love, and the star for Juneteenth. And I added all the words that I think of when I think about this holiday and I think about freedom. Let me show them to you quickly. Courage, joy, family, liberty, history, faith, justice, hope, freedom, and equality. Oh, good. I'm glad I didn't forget to show you my flag. And put it up here. All right, I'm ready to read you my poem. It comes from this book called Woke, A Young Poet's Guide to Call to Justice by Mahogany L. Brown, Elizabeth Acevedo, and Olivia Gatwood. The poem is called In the Next, and it's by Mahogany L. Brown, and it goes like this. Things should be different. We must keep our eyes on the prize. That's an expression. To keep your eyes on the prize means if you have a goal, keep your eye on that finish line. Don't get distracted. Try to stay focused and make it happen. So we must keep our eyes on the prize. The prize is a good life. The good life smells like true freedom. And true freedom is a song that we all should be able to sing. It will happen in the hills of Appalachia. It will happen in the streets of Brooklyn. It will happen in the veins of Detroit. Discrimination will no longer be tolerated. Hate will have nowhere to hide. Powerful and meek, strong and brilliant, all of us combined as one. This is when the sky will break open its blue, blue wings, and we will celebrate its lush song. So the bird in the sky represents freedom. Can you imagine being able to fly? That is true freedom. And a white dove also represents peace. So I really like this poem because it reminds us to keep our eyes on the prize and remember that we're celebrating the freedom of these slaves, but we continue to struggle for justice and equality in America right now. That's what we've been talking about all year. But one thing we can all agree on is that progress has definitely been made over time, and we just got to keep our eyes on the prize and keep pushing ahead. So I'm gonna have my little party now. Here's my treats. I got my red velvet cupcake. Red velvet actually tastes chocolatey. I think you'll like it if you get to try it. And this is Jersey velvet. It tastes like vanilla. I'm gonna share these with one of my co-workers. And I have my red juice. It's cranberry juice. And I'm gonna raise a toast. I'm gonna raise a toast to Juneteenth and to freedom. Cheers to including Black experiences in our American history. And cheers to you and all of our friends and allies who stand with us and support us and who work with us as we continue to fight for freedom and justice and equality. Clink. Cheers. You got to take a sip or it won't all manifest. And I want to say that there are definitely some Juneteenth activities taking place in your community. Get online, find out where they are, and check them out. I think you will enjoy it now that you know all about it. All right, my friends, I'll see you in August. Take care.